Welcome back, everybody. We are gonna try to drop the frame rate because it seems like, yeah, I've been putting too much on this. Very sorry for these difficulties, but in the meantime, we got the moves on the board. And wow, according to the DGT hammer, it's completely different games.
Yeah, no, the relay is incorrect. We know because we can see the moves being played.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's someone doing live AI fake deep fakes on Alexandra's and Andreas games. I do think it's more likely that the chess.com relay is having a hard time right now. But we'll just stick with the moves that we can see being made on the board. And Alexandra, she's still thinking on her move. And the point of White's previous pawn to c3, the idea is that if now Alexandra plays something like b5, advancing the pawns on the queen side, similarly to how Andrea is advancing her pawns on the king side. If Alexandra goes b5 now, it would be met by e5. E5 putting pressure on the knight, and when the knight retreats, White is able to go d4, setting up. If you can just make the move, Stina, instead of making a ton of arrows.
Yeah, so here we go here white to move. What was the move? If you see
So
it.
after b5, I'm thinking e5 puts pressure on Black's knight.
Well, hold on a second. I'm not sure if I have my last move for white. Right now, it's b5 here, but she castled. So she castled, and what did white do after b5? She hasn't played yet. Maybe rook e1?
He played rook e1, but rook e1 I think is a mistake. The reason I thought this c3 move was so clever is because he was getting ready to go e5 on the next one.
Right.
So instead of rook e1, he could have played pawn to e5.
Okay. Knight to d7, and then d4.
Then he can go d4. And he creates this pawn chain with the pawns defending each other up the board. That would very much restrict the movement of Black's pieces and actually give White some advantage with the advance in the center. So that's what I felt he was doing with this c3 move. But I suppose after rook e1, which he played instead, Alexandra still cannot really prevent this plan in the long term anyway. So he might as well improve his positioning of the rook, and then he can implement this pawn chain plan afterwards.
Right. But isn't there a way here, like, for example, after rook e1 to prevent that from happening?
Well, the only way I can see is knight to d7, right? So Alexandra can go. She actually did go knight d7.
Nice.
So he had his opportunity to go e5 and he didn't take it. But on the other hand, when Alexandra now is playing knight to d7, even though she is preventing the pawn to e5 plan, she's also putting her own knight in the way of her bishop. And the knight on d7 is also blocking her queen's protection of the d5 pawn. So there are some very clear disadvantages to this as well. That being said, if Giuseppe, or however it's pronounced, I think that's a great Italian name. Did you know that it's I heard it's Bobby's middle name?
Really?
I think so.
Wow.
It's supposed to be like John or something.
Got it.
The Italian version of John. Oh no! Fabiano's middle name is Luigi. Okay, it was something very, very Italian sounding.
Luigi. It's like from Mario. Luigi.
It's like Joseph. Oh, okay.
Yeah, this tournament sisters are playing in this. I mean, I know Andrea is playing in a section B. Is Alessandra also playing in a section B?
Yeah, so they're both playing in the same section. We could have a Botez versus Botez matchup. Honestly, I'm so surprised they didn't have to face each other in the previous tournament.
Oh,
I wonder
really?
if they bribed some officials or something.
No, I think they would love to do that. I think it would be amazing for content.
No,
No?
Alexandra specifically said that she'd rather not. I think part of the reason is because she feels like she has a lot to lose. Because
Mm.
everyone's expecting her to beat Andrea. And
Yeah.
Andrea has expressed some desire to have a Botez versus Botez matchup because she feels like she has everything to win from that.
What do you think, chat? We would all want to see that. Absolutely.
Mercarian is asking, what is the Italian and Russian version of Jon Ludwig? I'm not sure about the Italian or Russian, but Jon Ludwig is actually one of the most common names in the world.
It's like Ivan, I think, Vanya.
Well, maybe not that common, but it's not super uncommon. In Norway, there's less than 3 people who's called Jon Ludwig. But in French, Jean-Louis is one of the most common names,
Right.
which is pretty much the exact same as Jon Ludwig.
Jean-Louis. Yeah. Have you watched David Hobel and Magnus Carlsen lie detector?
I did watch that video, yeah.
What did you think about it?
I kind of wanted to do a lie detector myself. Is that a bit weird to say? I
No.
was really I would no, but I kind of was like, okay, this is really awkward. Having to answer some of the questions were quite personal, but it made me wonder how would I do if I got all of these awkward questions. Alexandra's opponent has played knight f1, and I really like Alexandra's follow-up.
She did
So much
d4?
so that I'm almost taking back everything I disliked about this knight to d7 move.
Oh, look
Because
at
now
you.
Alexandra goes d4. And
Yay.
the problem with her retreating the knight to d7 was that the lack of defense towards the d5 square from the queen. And now when Alexandra both manages to get an advantage with the pushing her pawns forward in the center of the board, but she also has her knights reasonably well placed to deal with. Well, basically, the knights have gotten out of the way so that she can push her kingside pawns.
Right. Looks cool. Yeah, this is one of those moments we talked about it. If you remember, chat on the previous streams, to understand what side to play, you gotta look at the direction of the pawns. And here, Alexandra's pawn direct towards the king side, so you're gonna push all the pawns there. Such as for Andrea, for example. I mean, Andrea doesn't have a real indicator on the pawn structure because it's not fixed. But yeah, d4 is our guides towards where and how we should go. The top
And
of the hill. Yeah.
In the meantime, Andrea has made some moves as well.
All right.
She's gone knight to h3.
Ooh, interesting. Andrea loves putting the knight on h3, which I'm
Yeah,
not a
but
big fan
I'm
of.
I'm I'm very surprised why she wouldn't push her pawn first. Um, because now the knight is blocking the white h pawn's ability to get into the game.
Yeah.
And then after pawn to e6, she's gone g5,
Oh,
which I
right.
really dislike because
Yeah, it's not
right now
natural.
she's opening up for the black rook. The rooks hate pawns that block their ability to get into the game early. In fact, rooks are the pieces that are the last to really get activated in a game of chess because you really struggle getting the rooks past the pawn barrier early on since they're hidden away in the corner of the board.
Right.
But now Andrea is allowing her opponent to just capture the white pawn, after which the black rook will have an easy time pointing down the board.
Yeah. It doesn't feel natural. I wonder how I would explain that.
Well, let me give it a shot then. I don't like the fact that she ends up having her pawn on the H file
Mm-hmm.
isolated from the rest of her pawns.
Right.
So the H2 pawn after this pawn advancement, that pawn is standing on its own. It cannot be protected by other pawns because we traded away its adjacent buddy. And that makes that pawn a long-term pawn weakness, which is why I'm pretty happy that Andrea's opponent now played h5, because I feel like he should have opened up for his rook when given a chance.
Yeah. Also, in general, when you attack, it's kind of like a certain pattern, right? You almost do these moves h4, g4 automatically. You don't even think about them.
Yeah,
Like
but
you push
now,
this
ironically, Andrea might have actually saved some time.
because he just played, or hasn't he?
So, yeah, he played h5, and that means now Andrea might not even need
Oh, yeah.
to go h4 in the future, so maybe she's saved a move compared to some other possibilities.
Now I see what you're talking about. Yeah, I wonder where she's gonna put this knight because again, you kind of want to like probably you don't want to push f4 because the bishop on b7 you want to keep this barrier against the bishop. So you might want to do knight like but knight f4 also you're like where is this knight going?
Yeah, it's not very clear. I would maybe make an argument for putting the knight on f2, because that frees you to push your f pawn up to be more attacking.
Okay.
Okay, Dina,
Yeah.
we're not on turns out the games are not on a delay the way I thought they were.
All right.
So let me find you the links to the games,
Yeah.
and so that we can actually get them updated automatically.
All right. And you know, chat, what it is time for. In the meantime, you know what it is time for, chat. Yeah, maybe if you can get the access to those, you can also tell me the moves, or because this one, yeah, this is still London. This is still London here. Up. There we go. First links. Copy. Let's see. This was
That's Andreas' game.
that's Andrea. Let's see. Oh, so it's basically some other person playing, I guess.
They just got the names wrong.
Yeah, they have it often. Oh, interesting. Nice. We got Andrea Botas here with okay, you don't want to know what's the rating of this. Another opponent. Okay, we got it updated. Yes. So basically when this stuff happens, you can kind of go through all the games and try to see what game you need just by kind of detecting what's the position. This is what Hammer did. He went to the tournament section and he scrolled through all of the games and then detected with his Grandmaster eye what was the right one. But up, and here we have Alexandra. I'm gonna flip the board. Okay, it says Rook E1 is the last move, but we know already that Alexandra played knight D7, I think you said, and then at some point she played D4.
Yeah. So knight F1, D4, C4, A6 are the missing moves on Alexandra's board.
Okay, tell me again. Knight F1. Yeah, you said knight F1. He played knight F1, D4, and what did he do?
D4.
C4.
Yeah.
That's an interesting way of reacting here. Black is already better.
He's trying to shut things down, but Alexandra has the furthest advanced pawn on this board. So she's quite happy to just shut this down. And well, the thing is, in order to win the game, you are going to have to open it up at some point. But because Alexandra has the furthest advanced pawn, that restricts the mobility of White's pieces. White cannot as easily maneuver their pieces as Alexandra can maneuver hers, because Alexandra has more kind of safe space in behind her pawns. But Alexandra is trying to open up a little bit. So she's going A6 to try and advance her pawns on the queen side. With B5 afterwards.
Okay, that's very legit.
And then I can imagine her opponent is going to play something like pawn to A4, trying to stop her from opening up on the queen side and just really trying to shut down the entire position. But the problem with A4 is that then Alexandra can basically just leave the queen side and say, okay, I'm not going to be able to open up here anytime soon, but I will do it at some point. But then Alexandra can go say, okay, I'm going to take a pause on the queen side and I'm going to focus on the king side instead. And then she can advance, well, her central pawn to E5, and she can also advance pawn to F5 in due course.
Nice. Yeah, I would consider, like, probably now it's not important, but at some point we kind of want to play B6. Maybe when they play, let's say, something like, if they play bishop D2, we might want to consider B6, because if not, White could play A5 and kind of stop us from pushing B5 when we want. So B6 would give us more flexibility. It's also kind of this, basic... how you say it, strategy with a pawn play. Like you don't want to get yourself fixed a backwards pawn in the future or isolated pawn. Like let's say I do a
Very
random f6, or I mean you probably want me to do f5, right?
well. I want you to go b6, but that ruins the instructional value of the point you're trying to make.
Yeah, like let's say queen c7 and then a5, and now if we ever push, they're gonna take en passant, and the position might be still good for black, but the thing is, this is not the kind of position necessarily that we would want, because the white's rook would be kind of attacking our pawn, where instead in some dream world, yeah, if we play b6 instead, and then when they play a5, we play b5, they don't have en passant anymore, and we continue putting the pressure on the b and c files.
Yeah, and this is kind of the identical situation we saw in Andreas' game, right? That Alexandra's opponent would try and set up a situation where Alexandra couldn't advance on the queen side without leaving her rook pawn, the a pawn, all alone on the side of the board, similar to what we were concerned about in Andreas' game, where Andrea allowed her opponent to give her one of those isolated pawns as well.
Yes.
Let's put in the moves that we already know on Andrea's board.
So it was knight h3 that we were not fans of. Then I believe he played something like e6, g5, h5. Is that correct? Great. And now Andrea put the knight somewhere. She put it on f4. Yeah, this is what I'm not a fan of. I mean, I understand now that she doesn't have any choice, but whenever she starts doing this, yeah, it always feels like unnatural. Like, you know, whenever I watch Andrea's games, I always have a feeling that there is certain, like, just kind of like basic, like, strategy and gap out there, and it's just like sometimes these things, they like, I don't know, a hammer. Do you have a feeling that this is not like kind of like this is not your...
I think you're being very strict. I do think it's a centralizing move. Is it where I would put my knight? Probably not. I did mention that if the knight went backwards instead, it would free up the pawn to be aggressive and try to push up the board, the f pawn.
Yeah.
Right now, the f pawn is doing a really good job of defending the pawn on e4. So if I'm gonna choose to push that pawn forward and give it an attacking mission instead, then I would want someone else to take over the defensive task of guarding the e4 pawn. So I was thinking knight to f2 and then push the f pawn afterwards.
Yeah, makes sense. So Andrea played knight to f4, and now the question is, and her opponent replied already. In fact, I think, what did he do? I cannot see. You should have a better eye.
I assume her opponent. Oh, her opponent actually went queen to e7.
Mm-hmm.
No, wait. No, sorry, I messed up. Andrea didn't go knight to f4. She went rook to g1.
Oh.
And this rook to g1 is actually quite unnecessary. She's guarding the pawn on g5, but that pawn didn't actually need defending. She's guarding the pawn so that she can go knight f4 afterwards. But even if she had gone knight f4 immediately instead of rook to g1, say knight to f4, then the threat against the pawn on g5 is nothing to be concerned about because of knight takes on e6. And yeah, the knight is attacking the queen, but more importantly, the bishop is also attacking the queen. So the queen needs to move, but then the knight is attacking the pawn on c7, the bishop on g7, and black's position just collapses.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like rook g1 was unnecessary. And then after queen to e7, which is a bit of a surprising move. I was expecting her opponent to keep developing the pieces and go knight to e7, but instead he's chosen to go with the queen.
He chose to go with the queen, and then Andrea played knight f4. I think he's preparing long castle hammer.
Yeah, and that's what he did.
Oh, and then Andrea played h4, right?
Yeah, then she played h4.
Instead, she had
So, like,
already some options to blow up, apparently.
how do you mean?
Such as d5, I assume, but I don't know if it's too early or
I
not.
think the opportunity to go d5 will always be there.
Correct.
I think h4 is fine. I think one of the good things about Andrea's position is it's not just her position. And like she's making, I think, small inaccuracies in her moves, but they're small. And the important thing is that she's playing at a pace that we haven't seen Andrea play pretty much ever before.
Right, which is good, which is even great.
It's very good.
It's amazing.
I would say arguably more important than playing the very best moves. If she can play the second best moves but actually keep some pace in her game, I think that's gonna improve her results.
Right. And Hammer, I think it's time for us to announce our sponsor, if I may take a small pause from our analysis now that the girls are in a very good situation, frankly speaking. So, ladies and gentlemen, here presented to you, Coinbase is the sponsor of this amazing trip that we are doing, this tournament, the International World Chess Festival in Sardinia. As you know already, Coinbase has been supporting BotezLive many times before. It is the most trusted and most secure cryptocurrency exchange on the market, used by over 140 million people globally. As supporters of the chess community, Coinbase is giving away over, careful chat, $20,000 in cryptocurrency throughout the whole tournament here in Sardinia. And viewers who enter using an email affiliated with their Coinbase account can participate in this giveaway. There will be one grand prize winner each day who receives $1,000 in cryptocurrency. And we will give away, of course, 500 each to 3 people if either of the sisters wins today. So we have an extra incentive chat for the sisters to win. And of course, even for those who are not selected, if you sign up using the link in chat or using promo code BOTEZ20, you will receive $20 in Bitcoin after your first transaction. So chat, be sure to sign up for your chance to win through the links in chat using commands Coinbase and Raffle. And on that note, we are getting back to the games because, believe it or not, but the sisters are in the most exciting situation I personally have seen them in a very long time. I don't know about you, Hammer.
Yeah, no, I think the chances today they're gonna be pretty good, and I think both girls have gotten off to a good start here, and I'm excited to see what's next. I'm surprised by Alexandra's moves now, though. So if you go back to where we were in Alexandra's game last,
Of course.
she kind of changed her mind about her plan. So when Alexandra played pawn to a6, it was quite clear she was intending to go pawn to b5 next.
Uh-huh.
trying to make an expansion on the queen side
Yeah.
of the board. But her opponent responded with pawn to a3.
A3.
Yeah.
Oh.
And then for some reason, I don't really understand. Alexandra didn't go pawn to b5, which seemed to be her original plan. Instead, she went pawn to e5.
Ooh.
Um, so I guess the reason she didn't want to go pawn to b5 is because then she was afraid white would once again be able to go pawn to e5 themselves. The
That
idea
is
being that
interesting.
even though Alexandra has 3 captures on that central pawn and black only has 2 defenders, the thing is that after the trades, white's bishop will be able to capture the rook in the corner. So Alexandra changed her mind completely in that she first went e5 to prevent this whole idea. And then I was expecting her to go b5 afterwards. But after bishop to d2, Alexandra decided it's more important for her to try and stop white from expanding with b4 than allow herself to expand with b5. So basically both players trying to push their pawns forward on the queen side. And well, who knows what's going to happen with that whole tension between the pawns on the queen side. And Alexandra decided I want to play pawn to a5 instead.
No
So
way.
she's kind of wasted a move in dealing with this advance on the queen side. But it might be okay even so, because as long as the queen side shuts down and there's nothing precarious happening there anytime soon, Alexandra will be able to focus to create an attack on the opposite flank. And in fact, after her opponent went rook to b1, trying once again to do this pawn to b4 move, Alexandra got to play a4, which is a perfect illustration of what you said, Dina,
Mm-hmm.
where you're preventing your opponent from pushing their pawns forward on the queen side, because anytime you do that, you end up with an en passant capture. So if you can get the moves,
Yeah, what was the
rook b1,
white move?
rook
Rook
b1.
b1 and now a4. Exactly same situation as you said that we were talking about, but reversed. Interesting. Yeah, yeah. As we were saying, b3, I assume, would be making more sense first, and then a4. I remember you were commentating the Prague Chess Festival, and in fact, you were busy with the girls. But my last round, I kind of let my opponent get away with the same thing. I was playing white against King's Indian, and I knew that this a4 is a positional important idea, and I should not let it happen. And I thought I was preventing it, but he managed to have it like tactically. You know those situations when you have a knight and the bishop, and you cannot take because you also protect the e4 pawn.
Yeah.
Here, that's way easier. Yeah, I just put the pawn on b3 and prevent. But no, he played rook b1 and now a4. And we kind of are happy again, even though we wasted the tempo, as Hammer said. But it seems like black has this kind of like safety cushion, right? That like they can allow certain like changing of directions and they're still better.
Yeah, and one of the plans Alexandra may still go for long term is still she can go pawn to b5 at some point in the future. So she hasn't, and this is quite important, she hasn't given away, she hasn't shut down the queen side completely. She's managed to discourage white from opening up on the queen side while all the same keeping her own option of pushing pawn to b5 and trying to open up the b file later on. So shows she's staying very flexible in her play. Her opponent went bishop to c1. The moves are coming in. They're both playing quite quickly.
What?
Uh,
Bishop to c1?
Yeah, so bishop to c1. I can only guess that um, Giuseppe realized that he's gonna have to play pawn to b3 at some point,
Oh yeah.
and then he wants to have the bishop protecting the pawn on a3, because we talked about this earlier, how if you open up the a file for black's rook, the black rook will be able to point down the a file,
Yeah.
and put pressure towards the opponent's pawn.
And in that case, if we were to make like few moves, like for example b4, because you all love en passant, pawn takes and let's say rook takes, yeah, here it's like obviously we got this isolated a3 pawn and black's rook is great, and the rook on b3, it's not like, it's still a good rook, right? Hammer, it attacks this so to be backwards pawn on b7, but you do not really want to have your bishop stick to this a3 pawn, so it's still like definitely there are more weaknesses for white here, and all these pieces, they are completely misplaced. The knight on f1, the bishop on g2, the knight on f3. So it just seems like in any way here, like white would not have like any harmony among their pieces.
Yeah, and that's kind of illustrated by the fact that he's going a bit back and forth and kind of changing his minds as the game progresses and Alexandra's plans are displayed. That being said, Alexandra now played knight b6, which I think is quite a clear mistake. Knight to b6 is depending very much on white wanting to go pawn to b3. So knight b6 is good if white plays pawn to b3 or pawn to b4. Either way, we're going to capture it. And then the knight can move on further to the a4 square. So this would be very, very nice for Alexandra.
Yeah.
However,
However,
if now her opponent chooses not to play this b3 move, then I fear that her knight is just going to be quite misplaced on the b6 square.
Right. So it's kind of like Alexandra is doing the prophylactics, right? But you always want to ask yourself, like, what if your opponent doesn't do what you're trying to prevent from happening? Then what is your knight doing on b6? And the answer is like, it's pretty awkward, right? Like it doesn't really have any square to go rather than go back to d7. So yeah, you can say that in exchange of the knight on b6, we got this awkward rook on b1 that doesn't do anything. The bishop on c1 that kind of also doesn't do anything. So let's say black sacrificed one piece for this idea and white sacrificed two pieces. So black is still good. But the thing is, like, in the position from where we started, you had so many other options. But okay, once again, you're gonna love hammer, but knight b6 is in some ways like the first line of the engine on chess.com. You know what you're gonna say.
Oh,
it's not
really?
well, not
No,
anymore,
actually,
but yeah, it's not.
knight b6 is kind of growing on me, actually,
Oh really?
because I don't like the b6 placement, but I've made a realization that I can try to get this knight to the d6 square, and that I would be a huge fan of.
Like knight c8 and knight d6.
Yeah, and yeah, no. So knight b6 is very growing on me. It's not the knight's final destination, but it's kind of doing a useful task on its way to its destination, because now we're discouraging white from opening up the queen side while getting our maneuver later on. Alexandra's opponent, he played h3 here.
H3.
And Alexandra went queen c7.
Okay.
Which I think is fine. I was skeptical initially, but this queen is going to be a nice protector of the c5 pawn and the b7 pawn. So I think the black queen is going to be good there.
Oh yeah.
Her opponent now played knight 1 to d2.
Okay.
And now I would like to see something like bishop e6 from Alexandra. The only thing I'm not no, actually no, bishop e6. Like her position is great.
Yeah. Of course. Of course it is.
Because now if he tries to go b4, which is probably his intention with running the knight over from the king side to the queen side, then Alexandra will be able to take en passant. And now the pawn on c5 is under attack, but the knight coming up to a4 will protect the pawn on c5 as well.
Yeah, and always want to jump into c3, which is like an outpost.
I'm actually not sure we want to do that, but
you
it's
don't
a
like that.
nice little bonus.
Yeah, you probably don't like that because there is always a bishop that can protect it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing it if I win material, but otherwise, I guess I just want to create pressure on both flanks.
Nice. Yeah.
But Alexandra has played bishop to h6 instead. And
Bishop
I'm not sure I like that move.
Bishop to h6. Ooh.
So the thing about this bishop on g7 is that even though this bishop right now is pointing in towards the black pawns, it is a very useful defender of the black king.
Yes, and plus, whenever we get a chance to play f5, and in the future we would for sure somewhere push e4 and even like d3, the bishop can always get activated. So it's that kind of a story of a King's Indian bishop. You rarely want to exchange it as black. You actually want to keep it as your, that joker card that you're gonna use when the right time comes.
I don't think it's a big mistake, but it's definitely a bit of an unusual approach to the King's Indian. But you can understand how she's thinking in terms of that bishop pointing towards her pawns. But those pawns were kind of useful anyway. They're playing so quickly. Her opponent now played b3.
Okay, there we go. Time for knight on b6 to get some job done.
Yeah. And now Alexandra's going to capture. Knight is going to recapture.
And knight to a4 we expect.
Well, let's watch out for the bishop on h6.
Oh, sorry. I meant the plan. Yeah, takes, queen takes, and then knight to...
So we're going to have to make the trade and then knight to a4. But actually, it's been advantageous for Alexandra here to trade off the dark squared bishops, because now the black knight can actually get into the c3 square without being afraid of being captured by the white bishop. Finally. So now I agree with you, Dina, that knight to c3 is a massive part of Alexandra's plan. And she has a very commanding position.
Finally, something that I've been dreaming about is going to take place. I cannot express my happiness. I kind of have this PTSD from Andreas' loss when the queen entered to h6, but the difference is that I guess we have the queen on c7, so the threat is knight g5, but even now, or even when it happens, like, we can always play f6 and protect the h7. So in this case, it should be all fine.
Yeah, I agree. The queen is a good protector along the 7th rank. So I'm feeling optimistic about Alexandra. The moves are coming in very quickly because both Alexandra and her opponent are actually playing super quick. So let's put the current position on the board and then check what has happened in Andrea's game.
Yeah, I believe it was yeah, okay, I'll leave it on knight b6, even though we kind of have b3, but while we're
Well, I mean, after knight b6, there's h3,
oh
queen
yeah,
c7.
it's yeah, no, never mind. I was just looking up the board, but okay, I'll leave it here after b3, right? No, she took.
She took.
She took on b3. Okay, Andrea. It's been a while we haven't talked about Andrea's game. Have things changed here?
Let me see. So after castles h4, so not a lot of moves have happened in that game. Andrea is spending a bit of time. Her opponent went queen to e8.
Queen to e8. Wow. Wouldn't be my first guess.
Well, the thing is, he only has.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, you're right. It's like he doesn't have a choice and he needs to put the knight on e7.
It's the only way to develop the knight. Yeah. So I guess that's why we were surprised with this queen coming to the e7 square to begin with.
Right. It almost feels like naturally you would want maybe like it's tricky because you don't know if you want to push, like normally you want to push the pawn on c5, right? Because you have this g7 bishop, and like this you create the square for the queen on c7, and then the knight comes naturally to e7 and you can always castle long. So this would probably be the most so to be logical way of developing pieces for black. Hammer.
Agreed. Yeah.
And instead knight f4 we got and this is the position that we have now. Queen e8, were there any moves from Andrea?
Yeah, so Andrea went knight d3.
Okay. Knight
and
to
after
e7.
Knight to e7, Andrea has gone knight to b4.
Interesting. It is a good move.
Oh,
yeah.
Really? Is it?
Yeah, surprisingly, it's a first line. But I do acknowledge that the knight has moved a little bit too much. Knight h3, knight f4, knight d3, knight b4. But hey, Andrea finished her development. Bishop on f1, we talked about it, chat, if you remember, is already a half-developed piece from the start, especially when it doesn't it doesn't stop the rooks from developing. So let's say now that Andrea finished developing castle and has the center, she's allowed to do whatever the F she wants. So the knight jumping all around does look weird, but it actually is fine here.
Well, the thing is, I'm concerned about this knight being attacked and black just pushing their pawns forward while attacking Andrea's pieces. So her opponent has gone knight to b8 now. Defending the pawn on a6, which was under attack, which was Andrea's idea to begin with. And now I'm very concerned that Andrea's going to get hit by pawn to c5 next.
And the queen is on d1, kind of might be not comfortable with the next ray from the rook on d8.
I mean, in fact, if you just make a silly move, say king to b1, I think king b1, pawn to c5, does black not win a piece there?
Ooh, the only possible reaction is to take, and after you take back.
Already taking is a bit of a bad thing happening for Andrea because it opens up for her opponent's bishop. But my thought was that, yeah, the variation you're showing right now, Dina, that if Andrea tries to block the attack on her queen with a knight that was also under attack,
Yeah.
then Andrea's gonna lose her knight.
For some reason, obviously, Andrea would never do it because it's scary as hell. And for some reason, Engine says it's fine, but obviously we're here not to talk about what Engine says. No human would ever do that. So I agree. C5 looks scary as heck. And how to stop it? There is a way, Hammer, pushing the D pawn. Let's say D5.
Yeah.
And if A5, I assume. Oh my goodness!
I assume
Oh my
bishop
lord!
B5.
Nope. In this position, there is only one move, and it's not bishop B5.
Is it knight B5?
It is knight B5. Careful, this is not a mate because the king can escape, but it would cost them a piece at the very least. C6 has to be played. Oh, actually, it would cost them. Oh, never mind. It would cost them.
B6 is.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
I can see Andrea checkmating here. Yeah, it's king c7. Oh god, no, that would never happen. Okay, honestly, Andrea can easily find this. But she has to be precise. She has to play d5. This is a critical moment for white. d5 has been in the air for so many times, like almost 10 moves already, and Andrea never played it, even though, you know, like, okay, everybody tells you, take the center. But once you took the center and your opponent doesn't take the center, and I, by the way, learned it very late, what do you do next? So the answer is, if you can continue pushing forward your pawns, you should do it. It will give you space and many squares. So in this moderns, in this perk defenses, these d5s and d5s are typical moves, and d5 has been in the air all the time. But now bright side for us is that Andrea kind of is forced to do it. Otherwise, she might lose her piece after c5.
Yeah. I wish I was as optimistic and positive as you, Dina. I guess you've never heard that before.
No. But I knew coming here into the studio commentating with you, Hammer, I knew that I was gonna turn into the most positive, commentator the world has ever seen.
I first thing on the agenda is for Andrea to realize that her position is on the verge of being highly problematic. But as long as she makes that realization, I do agree with you that d5 is very findable in that regard. As long as she realizes that her opponent's threat of pawn to c5 is a massive issue, then yes, I do agree. D5 is likely to happen.
Yeah. To some extent, Andrea, from what I noticed, she always moves forward. So it would be also a move within her style, if I can say so. Like,
very good point. Yeah.
And she must see the threat c5, so that's why I'm also having high hopes here. But she might calculate a5, and then it's like, but what happens next? If I go back, then they just grab the d5 pawn, and I'm really, really unhappy here. But once again, knowing Andrea, first thing that she calculates, her candidate moves are never to defend or retreat the attacked piece. Her first candidates are always to counterattack. So all she needs to spot is this naughty little check, almost like a smothered mate. If she sees that, I tell you, Hammer, we gonna see a win. And you know what that means. A win.
Big prizes for everyone.
Exactly. A win means $1,500 extra in giveaway for today. Remember, guys, if one of the sisters scores, we get an extra giveaway from what we have already presented by Coinbase, our very loyal sponsor for chess tourneys and travel shows. All right.
Dina, I have a comment.
Yeah.
Though.
Please.
Because my first instinct after this D5 A5 was to go Bishop B5, but I'm realizing Bishop B5 would be a horrendous blunder.
Yeah, you would give away a queen for 3 pieces, right?
I mean, that would be one thing I'm concerned about. That was initially gonna be my comment, but then I realized there's something even better.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because after bishop to B5, black has bishop takes C3.
Oh, for some reason this doesn't work. Oh, actually it does. You're right. It's just not as winning as the other one. But yeah, it's pretty enough. So, well, this is very straightforward. After queen d3, you would just simply retreat the queen, play like whatever, knight d7.
Yeah, of course, I hadn't seen queen d3.
Yeah, well, queen d3 is like, again, it's just black is piece up. Yeah, but actually this is an important moment for our viewers because I am sure not everyone knows that 3 pieces are way stronger than the queen. Even mathematically and statistically, it is proven to be the same. 3 pieces means 9 pawns and the queen is 9 pawns, so it's the same thing. But in practice, 3 pieces are always stronger than the queen because the coordination between 3 is just so much better than 1, especially like in a close position like this one. Oh, actually, why am I like... Yeah, I know you, Hammer, are not a fan of engine, and I actually respect that and agree with that. But
I mean, I'm a big fan of the engine.
Oh yeah,
I don't know why you wouldn't have that impression. I literally got in a fight on Twitter the other week.
Oh really?
About me believing that chess commentators should use the engine to help them.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, I had that impression because when we had our preparation call, you mentioned that I was trusting a bit too much to the engine. So I'm like, trying to bring the human side here, and I see that this position apparently is okay for white, even slightly better. So it's kind of everything I said doesn't make sense. I mean, you're gonna have to explain this to me.
Your point stands, right?
Yeah.
That 3 pieces are about worth the same as a queen, but then in this specific scenario, the black pieces are a bit hindered by the white pawns, which means that the queen was okay in that case anyway.
Yeah, and here, like the line that you suggested, which is take the free piece, is actually better.
After bishop takes knight, I was thinking we were going to examine the recapture, because once someone captures our guy, the most obvious thing to do is to recapture.
Oh,
you're on the wrong board.
No, Hammer. I'm on it's that one of those moments when the organizers of the tournaments realize what happened and they recreate everything. So that means we can finally go to Andrea. Up, here we go. And her board got updated.
Nice.
Yeah. And sure did Alex. No, Alex, not yet.
Alexandra's board hasn't been fixed yet.
Yeah, so I'm gonna bring this extra moves right here. Yeah, this is what we have right now. Great.
But I do think D5 is very important, and Andrea did not play D5, Dina.
Oh no!
So that's potentially very, very dangerous for her.
Oh no.
She did not react to her opponent's big threat. But oh well, maybe she did react actually. Now that I think about it,
Did she move the a
uh,
pawn?
she went knight to h3.
What?
And because the bishop is now pointing in towards the black king
Oh, you mean the
on
bishop?
c8.
Oh, the bishop to
So
h.
because the bishop is pointing towards the king, now if her opponent goes pawn to c5, previously we were concerned about where Andrea was going to put her knight if the pawn came to attack it. But now knight to d5 is available because that knight cannot be captured by the black pawn due to the bishop's diagonal towards the black
Wow.
king.
That's actually really smart. I like that.
Her opponent quickly goes pawn to a5. But frankly, if he wanted to play that move, I feel like he could have done so on the previous move instead.
Right.
So he avoids pawn to c5, goes pawn to a5 instead, still attacks the knight, but Andrea can now safely retreat the knight, and she has provoked a very slight weakening in Black's position. She retreated the knight, Dina.
What? Yeah, I was gonna say, like, how high would be the chance that Andrea plays knight d5? Because as we know, she always gets moves forward, and she put the bishop on h3 to do this, and this would be a big temptation, which would be actually very toxic, very wrong, because here biggest advantage of white, as you know already, is the space advantage. So changing pieces, minor pieces, would be actually in Black's favor. So I'm actually very pleased to see knight d3 because it shows a lot of maturity from Andrea, even though she put her bishop on h3 to kind of like have this knight d5 in their idea.
Yeah, knight d5 was an interesting alternative. There's nothing wrong in what Andrea did, though. And what I do like is that she's making her decisions quite quickly. And also, like you said, Dina, she's becoming more unpredictable in that she's no longer only moving forward. She's actually sometimes retreating. And that is some personal growth
Yeah,
on Andrea there.
absolutely. There we go. She learned. She learned. Um, yeah, we're good. We're good here. We like the position. And even, Hammer, speaking of personal growth, even bishop to h3 is a lot of personal growth because it shows that she knows she needs to finish the development, which she did. And I'm super happy to see
Oh, does
that.
she not finish her development normally? I
We
haven't
had a
noticed
lot of
that.
discussions on that, and chat is my witness. We had a lot of discussions on that previously, and sometimes I would feel very frustrated, and then I would tell her about everything about her, and I feel like we improved here as well. I feel like we actually, she heard
Yeah, and
me.
when you say discussion,
Yeah.
did she get a talking to by Mother Dina?
Well, I think even though I seem like rough and toxic, I think I know how to get my points across and how to be kind of smooth and try to explain it. And I think she listens. I actually think she listens. We did have a couple of
Wow.
conversations. Like we did a FaceTime once in between. And I also sometimes I just send her a message after her game, kind of summarizing what I think about. And of course, she's more than welcome not to take my thoughts seriously, but hey, I think it doesn't hurt.
I have tried giving Andrea some feedback, and I gotta say, listening to what I'm saying is not really something she's doing. So I'm impressed with your ability to reach her with your assessments, Dina.
Well, I assume it's my female touch, You know when to be tough, but you also know when to be smooth. Or maybe she just likes me more than she likes you.
I think that probably has something to do with it. Okay, we're gonna let Andrea think about this. Her opponent did go knight to d7.
Okay.
So they're kind of going back and forth, both of them, with the knights. But that also means that Andrea moving her knight up hasn't really lost her any time,
Great.
because she also managed to get her opponent to go back and forth
Yeah,
with the knight.
I agree. These are really great news.